Hi, folks. Steve Urban here from the Riderflex Podcast. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by two companies I'm deeply involved with. First up, Reliance, your trusted partner for nationwide robot maintenance and repair, specializing in humanoid and autonomous robots for homes and businesses. Visit roboreliance.com to learn more. And for all your home maintenance needs, there's Cura Home Maintenance of Colorado. From air duct cleaning to dryer vent cleaning to gutter cleanouts and much more. Check them out at curahomeservices.com. And finally, don't forget about the two books we've published in the Riderflex Guide series. The first being the Riderflex Guide, Inspiring and Hiring. This one is targeted at all types of managers and supervisors, anybody that interviews and hires people. And the second one, the Riderflex Guide 2.0, Mastering Job Interviews, designated to help all levels of job candidates prepare for and ace the interview. And now for today's episode. Please subscribe and enjoy. Where are you?
I am in Houston. I know it looks like a bit of a dungeon, but I'm actually on campus at Rice University. They're doing construction, so my windows are boarded up, so it looks a little ominous. And those are some well, it's kind of blurred out, but it's some drawings that my 4 and 6 year old left when they came to visit me. Yeah, cool. So they learned that my son he's 6. He thinks when I ask him, like, what do you think mommy does? He goes like, Mommy, all you do is you press buttons on a computer. That's all you do, Mommy. And so I was like, well, you should come to Rice and see. And I was very excited for him to see like the classroom and like some of the students I work with. And he was more excited about the robotic coffee maker that they have on campus that makes automated coffees than he was about anything else.
Pretty cool.
So they keep you humble.
Is that a full-time gig for you, the professor at the school, or are you just doing it part-time?
Part-time. So I had my own startup. I did digital healthcare transformation. I had that for about 10 years. We did a lot of work on propensity modeling and kind of patient acquisition in the healthcare sector through advertising. Sold to private equity about 2 years ago. And
how come you're still working? Why are you still working? How come you're not on like a yacht somewhere? What's going on?
Well, so I think funny thing that you should say, like, I remember my last day very vividly. Because I transitioned for about a year and then I officially left. And I was in that time started adjunct teaching and fell in love with it. And I remember when I was like, hey, I think it's time for me to move on for everyone's sake. And
typically, no, I mean, that's normal, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, the irony of it, my sister, she's in private equity, not part of the deal, but as tangential. And so I was talking to her about the sale, and I was like, I'm going to be the best employee they've ever seen. It's going to be fabulous. I'm going to be such a great 9-to-5er. No, I was terrible at it. And she's like, yeah. And it's not anything bad. It's just, But I remember on my last day, I remember like crying and being like, what if I'm never employed again? What if I never do anything of value? What if I've peaked and now like everything's downhill? And, I think it's so funny because it felt like it took a lot of courage to leave because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen next. And I joke like with some people, I did a speech recently and I was like, it's been 536 days since I owned a company. Like I'm a recovering entrepreneur. And it's like an addiction. And I teach, and then I have a new startup that I've been doing, and it's been great.
Everything you said there is all relatively normal, right? I mean, you worry that you've peaked. I mean, that happens not only for entrepreneurs that have sold, but it also happens to people once they hit C-level, right? Once they make a COO or a CEO, and then that job ends for some reason. And especially if they're a little older, you're still like 29 years old. So
Botox seems to be working, so that's good.
Yeah. But if they're like, let's say they're 45 years old and they were at C-level, everybody just goes to like, oh shit, was that it for me? Was that my peak moment? What am I gonna like work at Home Depot now, or what?
100, like those are like, I'm a talker, so I was like Walmart greeter maybe.
Happens. So, it totally happens.
And you just have that itch. I think people who are entrepreneurs, it's in their soul. It is an addiction in a way that you just can't help yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's
Especially,
kind
what
of
did you say,
set me a goal.
10 years or 6 years? How long did you have it?
10.
Yeah. I mean, and then all of a sudden you're having to like ask somebody if you can go on vacation.
Yeah. Well, going on or like I got a lot of like it's really great that you're like super dedicated and you care, but you care sometimes too much about too many things. And I was like, I don't know how to turn it on and off. Like it's like it's either like full speed or nothing at all. Like I can't do I couldn't care about the work that was being delivered. Like I couldn't like watch things slip that I personally didn't love.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an adjustment. I guess being a teacher at a college is probably not, there's a little more flexibility, right? You're not like in an office where somebody's breathing down your neck saying, hey, this is when you can go to break.
Yeah. And
Uh,
they're fabulous. Like the whole pretense of teaching, I was going to teach one semester as an adjunct. And then by the time I finished the course, I had the two deans come up to me and take me to lunch and said, would you be interested in doing this like in a more full-time capacity or more permanent capacity?
Yeah.
And, one of the moments I had was, in my adjunct class I taught, which was about last spring, I had one student, a female student, who came up to me after my first class and said, I think I need to drop this class. I'm not technical. I don't think I can do this.
what was the class?
So I teach two classes. I teach generative AI strategy implementation and then a generative AI tools course where we do kind of like their final product is a custom wrapper that they learn to build, but it's geared towards non-technical students in the business school. So I teach in the business school, the MBA school. And I was like, just stick with it. I was like, it seems intimidating. The language is intimidating of AI. But once you peel back the onion a little bit, it's not that complicated. And the world, like, yes, and I have tons of friends who are super nerds like me, who are even more nerdy than I am, PhDs in AI and ML from Stanford and all of that. And, what I think the opportunity lies is actually people who have a deep understanding of a unique problem or an industry who can pair it and can understand AI and where it can integrate. Because the developers and the PhDs, they understand the tech, but they don't know what's the business problem to solve.
Yeah, great point. Yeah. So that helped. So the student stayed, I hope.
Student stayed. Not only did she stay, at the end of the class, I got an email that like brought me to tears again. And she said this was the most amazing class she had at Rice. And not only was it profoundly important to her, she truly felt like it changed the trajectory of her career.
Cool.
And she is now leading an AI initiatives at a large company. And so to see that, and I was like, you don't have to know how to code. Here are these tools, right? Like get past the intimidation of someone trying to talk over you about like what a model is. A model is just software, right? Like we're just predicting the next word, right? Like take away some of the fear, understand at a high level in theory how these work so you can question it, but don't let this prohibit you from leaning in, because we need, no offense, but like if I have to go to another conference with a bunch of tech bros, I'm gonna be disappointed. I want some other voices in the room.
That's good. That's good stuff. Okay, so one kid, 6 or how many kids you got? You said 6-year-old.
Oh, 6 and 4. So I have a 6-year-old girl, a 6-year-old boy, and a 4-year-old girl.
How long when did you sell the business?
In 2023.
Wow. So you had toddlers at home while you were running your company and taking it through a sale?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What's your husband do?
He's an architect.
I see.
So that helps a lot. I have a village. I have an amazing nanny who I literally would do anything for. She's our family, and I couldn't be successful without her. And it takes a village, and it's I'm a better mom because of it too. I mean, I think this energy and this intensity in terms of just wanting to understand things, if I spent all that time on my kids, there would be a lot of therapy probably needed in the future. So it's probably a good balance of making sure I have, quality time over quantity time. But
Yeah.
the sale was, I mean, it's another full-time job.
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, would that take a year, 6 months?
About a year,
Yeah.
because we had the first one fell through surprisingly after quality of earnings that passed. There was some internal issue with their, two fighting partners disagreeing.
Yeah. But you
But
learned a ton. You probably learned a ton
a
for the first.
ton. And
Yeah.
somebody who had met us through the due diligence process reached out to us and said, "Hey, I heard they're passing, but we would like to buy you." And she was an amazing person, and I couldn't be happier.
Now, you're from the East Coast, aren't you?
No, born and raised in Houston. But
Okay.
my family's all from the Northeast. So if you don't hear an accent, it's because my mom was from Bayonne. My dad was from Long Island.
Yeah. Okay. Because your access is watered down. Heinz 57. It's hard to pin it down.
Well, when you spend your college career studying linguistics as well, you learn to kind of moderate a bit of the accent, unless you get like a good cocktail in me, and then you'll hear it come out.
Well, you haven't said y'all yet, though. I haven't heard it, or maybe I wasn't paying attention.
I might not have yet, but it, like I said, if I get one margarita or ranch water in, it's definitely coming
out. So how did your dad was from Long Island, your mom, how'd they get to Houston?
Oil and gas. So they got to Houston for oil and gas. They said they lived in New York and then DC and Chicago and then moved to Houston. And the running thesis was no more than 2 years in Texas. And then we're going to get back to the East Coast. And they never moved back.
Yeah, they never moved back. I mean, nothing against, I mean, here's the thing. If you could have like a little house in upstate New York in the summer and and then a place in Houston in the winter. Okay, fine. That worked.
It is not nice in Houston right now.
Not nice.
It's, heat index of like 102. It is flooding probably. There's storms this morning. So they were like flooding, you just got to wait it out. But
July in Houston is not good.
No, neither is August. Honestly, that's why most people leave. It's why most people leave. But I will say, I got some advice recently from a mentor of mine who I love dearly. And I didn't take his advice, but sometimes I think it's good to get other individuals' advice. And, initially his thought was, if I want to get in and spend more time in the AI space, that I needed to move to Silicon Valley. And I said, there's something, if you get beyond the sticky humidity of Houston, you get exposed to the actually really good food scene. And the people here are bootstrap.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All of the earth people who are just
I agree with that.
Yeah. And so I think there's, I kind of have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder where I'm like, I'm going to put Houston on the map. Like like one of these days. Because I remember when we were the older firm that I had, I would get on calls because we worked with health systems across the US and they would be like, "Oh, are you from, where are you guys based out of?" And I'd be like, "Oh, Texas." They're like, "Austin?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Dallas?" I was like, "Oh, for the love of Christ, like Houston." Like that's, we're not we're the third, fourth largest city, depending on Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can get anywhere you need to from your airport. Yeah. I mean, it's a nice hub. Yeah. Besides the weather, I was when I was in college, I grew up in Oklahoma, and when I was in college, I went down one summer to work in the refineries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Down in Houston, I was just like, okay. Yeah. I remember calling a buddy of mine. I was like, "Hey man, that little retail clerk job, the air conditioning back home, is that still available?"
Yeah. Oh, it's tough. It is not easy or for the faint of heart.
So you majored in linguistics, and so what was the plan? Were you going to teach? What was your plan?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I was diagnosed with dyslexia as a child, and I was told by like my school counselor that I probably shouldn't go to a 4-year college. I should never study a second language. But I also had ADHD, which means I can be pretty stubborn. And so I was like, watch me. And so for me, it was like, language was like very hard for me. My brain didn't really process language in the same way as it did for everybody else. And so linguistics was a way to take language and turn it into math, and to understand it better. And so that's why I studied it, which, coming from, a long line of oil and gas folks, my parents were not necessarily happy when I was like, I'm going to be studying linguistics and Spanish. My parents were like, look,
Your dad's like,
be an
huh?
engineer? Like, come on, be an engineer. And so,
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, my goal, after I graduated, I did a Fulbright in Madrid on linguistic, phonetics and phonology and second language acquisition. And so my goal was to go and get my PhD. But having that tough New Yorker mom, I finished my Fulbright. I had about 6-7 months before my PhD program started. And she said, if you live in this house, you have to have a job.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah, it's like, come on. Yeah, come on, Dad. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm a Fulbright. I just got my PhD. I'm going to get my PhD. I have a scholarship. My mom was like, I don't care. You get a job. And so I started working I did work at a startup automotive digital agency. And one of my first tasks.
That's where the startup bug came in there.
Yeah. And then you start realizing like coding language and like problem, like everything is a pattern. And so I was able to apply my linguistic background and coding of language into coding of so many other things in terms of regression analysis to actual coding. And so
can you write code now? Can you write code?
So I will tell you this. So I can hack through code.
Okay.
When I had my old firm, I had an engineering team who was phenomenal. And anytime they were trying to push back a deadline, the one way I could always get them to do it is I'd be like, oh, guys, like, don't worry about it. I'll jump in and I'll help code out these 3 things, whatever. And sure enough, but not even 5 minutes would pass and they'd be like, no, we got it. We'll figure it out. Because, I can, but it comes with a decent amount of technical debt. It's a lot longer. It's not as efficient. And so they were like, please just do not code, please.
And what was Decode? What was was it a marketing? Tell me about the company real quick. Give us a brief overview.
Yeah. So we did like digital healthcare transformation. So we did anything from building middleware software and products to our big core component is we did programmatic media buying, if you will. So we built what I used to call lovingly like our Frankenstein in-house, which was like a DMP, DSP, and ad server. And so what we did is we actually would take anonymized healthcare data, do propensity modeling to find like comorbidities, to identify like different types of payer. So when hospitals or clinician groups were trying to whether recruit for clinical trials and ensure that patients were aware of their services, we were reaching the right target demographic at the right time. And then we did a lot of like CDP deployment type work.
Gotcha. When did ChatGPT 3 was launched in 2023, right? Or 2022?
So ChatGPT 3 was November 2022, I believe. That's when it kind of went mainstream, right?
You sold at the right time, girl. You sold it. You sold at the right time.
I kind of saw it coming a bit.
Yeah. Man, yeah.
Yeah. But, it's funny that you say that because, we were utilizing Vertex AI. So we were using AI. So within the Google Data Studio and things like that. And I had been doing machine learning algorithms. And then it was funny because it was, I talked about my mom and my dad being in oil and gas. And of course, my sister, who's their golden child, did, private equity in oil and gas.
You're the doctor and she's the golden child. Okay. What is she, an astronaut?
She's like director level at a private equity firm focused in oil and gas, like went to Wharton, like worked in New York and investment banking. And so usually the family dinners were like, conversation around like, oh, blah, 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 like this shale and like price per barrel. And I would slowly retreat. But I remember vividly in November 22, my dad was like, have you heard of this like chat GP something? And I literally was like, threw my sister off the pedestal. And I was like, yes, I finally am relevant.
Good.
But it's
isn't it? I think not everybody. So many of us will now have a ChatGPT 3 moment, was what I call it, right? There's a certain things that you use for the first time and you're like, oh wow, okay, yeah. I think things may have just changed.
Yeah. And it's so true. And it's funny because there's only been 2 times in my life where I've felt somewhat relevant based on my background. is when that movie, I think Amy Adams in it, like the Alien movie where she has to translate for the alien that comes down to Earth.
I don't know that one, but
they bring
yeah.
in a linguist
Yeah.
in to like translate. So there was that movie that came out in like the
You're
early
like, I'm
2000s.
justified. I'm justified.
And people were like, oh, this is what linguistics is. And I was like, yeah. And then November 22, people are like, oh, large language models. Oh, wait, didn't you study linguistics? Is there some connection here? And I'm like, yes. So
Cool. Well, congratulations on the exit. Good for you. Did you still own 100%? Did you have co-founders? I know you probably can't go into a bunch of detail, but
no, so I didn't. Like I said, I was probably more of an accidental owner.
okay.
I was young and naive when I started the business. I remember vividly, I had business cards that said like executive, account executive on them.
That's fine.
I didn't lie. I just, was like, oh, they'd be like, oh, can we work on this? And I was like, oh, let me see what I can do. Kind of thing. And I remember vividly when my first client, she's like a good friend and mentor, like 2 years in, I was like signing our contract and she was like, do you own the company? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it so? Oh my God, we could talk about this for hours. Isn't it so? When you're a startup person, like you just figure shit out. Like you'll just fight your way through. You'll just like, I mean, there's so many times when me and my co-founders we'll be on a call and someone would be like, can you, or have you ever? And we're just like, oh yeah. No, yeah. We've done a bunch of that. And then we'll hang up the phone and go, oh man, how are we going to do this?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. People would be like, oh, you must have spent a ton of time in healthcare. And I'm like, no, I like literally.
No.
But I used to write down every acronym that was said, and I go back to Google after each meeting and try to figure out and understand it. And so, but I did have a partner at the very beginning.
You did?
I partnered with a traditional agency for about 9 months, 18 months, maybe.
Okay.
And then I bought her out.
Good for you. Okay. All right.
And then
she probably wishes 9 years later, she's like, damn it.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, like we just had very different goals. And, we finally sat down and, it was one of those things where she was kind of towards the end of her career. I was starting out. I was like, I want to grow the team. I want to scale the team. I want to add these capabilities. I want to push innovation. And her mentality was very much so like, I'm nearing the end of my career. I'm trying to take out cash out of the business. I
got it. I get
those other things. And she had her own traditional agency. So we kind of had like a little bit of a partnership, but, it's funny. It's just, you just want two different things and there's nothing wrong with either one of them. But I think, being able to focus and drive the business, I was like, I'm willing to like, was the lowest paid employee for like 3-4 years, because every cent I made, I put back in.
Tell me about this new thing you got going on. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So, I started off as we were doing AI consulting work as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. I was like, I'm just going to take the opportunity to, like, I really believe in the importance of education, which I think is also why I somehow ended up in the teaching role. Okay. And to me, it's not like, I don't want to talk to businesses and consult based on continuing to obscure the world of AI or kind of utilizing smoke and mirrors. I want to teach them to fish. I want them to understand. I want to kind of help and almost make myself irrelevant. And during that process, one of the clients I was working with, over like tea, we were talking. And so now we're pivoting to focus on investor relations. So we're utilizing AI to help draft earnings, scripts, 10Qs, Ks, things of that nature. So we have one client that's on our beta and we're going to market in hopefully September, October.
Really? Okay. Very good. Did you raise cash? You put in your own cash? How'd you fund it?
Oh, well, as a person that's been there before, I've been using kind of some of the proceeds from the previous sale and using my very luxurious teaching salary to keep me afloat, but really been focusing on bringing in people far smarter than I am to make this a reality.
Well, that's the key to being a great startup CEO is surrounding yourself with talent that can help you build your dream because you can't do it all by yourself. Or you can do more of it by yourself now because of AI than you used to, but you need talent around you. Okay, so you're going to build this on the side, keep teaching, see how it goes?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay.
And I think I
All right.
always want to keep teaching because, like, when I had this aha moment when somebody very near and dear to my heart asked me, I had this, I talked about it a little earlier. I was like, had this anxiety of like, did I peak? And, am I ever going to be successful and whatever? And he was like, why don't you think you're successful yet? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, I need you to define what success looks like. And I was like, okay. And I was like, done. And I started like, thinking, and he's like, wait, but it's the same level or like the same benchmark or stick that you're going to hold out for your kids in terms of how they define success. And it made me like pause and really think. And, one of the things I like through that process, I realized it's not about how much money you make. It's not about this. It's about like, how do you leave a legacy? How do you leave an impact? And teaching allows me like the product build, I absolutely love. And it gives me the ability to scratch the innovation itch, to maintain that tenacity that I have, because academia is a little bit slower moving in a lot of ways compared to a startup. But the teaching allows me to feel like I'm helping others realize their dreams or make an impact. And so why might not, the thought of the kind of concentric circles of like, my students taking something I taught them and being able to build something or help others, and that kind of trickling down, it's like really exciting for me. So, I'm kind of scaling back on the teaching a little bit, but it's something I think I'm going to always keep, because it also forces me to stay up to date, because my students don't.
I was going to say earlier when you told me the two classes you're teaching, those two subjects, what's most interesting there is it's changing every week almost, right? And so, can you imagine you're a history, you're a, I don't know, whatever history teacher, some sort of college professor where you're just teaching the same shit year after year after year after year. Well, in your case, it's changing every month. And so your coursework is constantly updating.
Oh, yeah. Cool. And it always seems to, like in the tools course, we go through some of the core tools, and then I kind of teach them frameworks that they can use so they can continue to evaluate on their own terms. But I feel like without fail, it'll be like, okay, I'm going to teach you, for example, it would be like 2 weeks ago, I would have taught the Gemini stack. And then it's like, literally the following week, it's like, everything's changed. And then I'm like, okay.
Crazy, man.
So I actually started doing, I have what I call like a rapid fire at the beginning of class. And it's like 15 to 20 minutes to say like, here's what's going on in the news.
This week in tech.
Yeah. And I just, sometimes I'll be like, okay, so what I taught you last week? Okay, well, some of that stuff still applies, but here are the 3 new things you need to know about this tech platform.
Absolutely.
And it keeps me on my toes.
No doubt. I think that's fantastic. I tell people 2 things. I tell them, what happens, people will call me and they'll say, well, oh my God, so Google just released this, and I was using ChatGPT for that, and this, and I was using this, and I was like, and I what I always say is, I'm like, look. I encourage, don't just jump from platform to platform every time one of them launches their latest. Just hang tight. If you love Claude, or if you love Gemini, or if you just hang tight, because they're all moving so fast that the next release is coming. I said now, if somebody launches something that is like light years ahead, okay. But if it's like, if they launch it and they're like, it's a little bit better, well, I'm not going to just go from Ford to Chevy if it's a little bit better. It's going to have to be a lot better for me to switch.
Well, it's funny that you say that. So, and I'm happy to share this with you, and you can share it with your listeners. I have my students create a prompt matrix, if you will. And they have a writing prompt, an analytical prompt, a creative prompt, a coding prompt. And they pick it based on what their role is or what their business does, relevant for them. So they have a standard prompt that they keep, and then they have all of the companies and the models. Okay. And they have to use the same prompt across all of them.
Good idea.
And they copy and paste in the output, and then rank it or kind of give it a score based on a formula I give them, so that they can start to see, you think about,
which one do you like? Yeah, which one do you like?
And it might be,
maybe there is no right or wrong. Maybe it's just, what do you like best?
Yeah. And I think, there's Chatbot Arena, right, which ranks all of the models and stuff. But I was like, those are subjective. And like, what does it mean for your business? And I have students to this day, when a model's released, they have all the other ones in there. So they just go in and they take their copy and paste, get their outputs, and then they're able to make a judgment call of like, it's not really incrementally better. It's maybe like marginal. So it's not worth the cost change. And so it's been something I'm happy to share it with you guys, with you. And
cool. That's cool. No, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I think I encourage people not to be jumping around all the time, or else you get lost. And quite frankly, there's just so much to keep up with. I mean, damn, I mean, listen, when I'm on the treadmill or I'm on the bike or I'm sitting here doing technical work, I'm listening to every single thing I can as fast as I can go. And still, there are days where I'm thinking, okay, I don't want anything else new to come out this week. My brain's already overloaded.
I feel that way too. And I mean, listen, like I teach, this is my job. Like I have to stay on top of it. And it's even hard for me. And I always tell people, like, it's funny because some people will ask me like, oh, have you heard about this? And I'll be like, no, I haven't. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, yeah. I'm like, you don't have to know everything. I was like, part of being a leader in the space right now is admitting like that you don't have all the answers. Like this is super fast changing. And so it's okay, like, it's more important. It's not about having all the right answers. It's about making sure you know what questions to ask when this new tech is coming out. I was like,
Agreed. Knowing what questions to ask. And I think also being really good at the platform you do choose to use. Yeah, make sure you really know that platform and use it wisely. I think is absolutely critical. So, okay, so I could talk to you for hours about AI. What I want to talk to you about, the most fascinating pieces right now, or the funnest conversations right now, are we headed towards utopia or dystopia or somewhere in between? I mean, there's so many. Do you follow that podcast, The Diary of a CEO?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm going to have to add it to my list.
Yeah, it's a good one. Look up the guy's name, but such a good episode recently. Had a bunch of good guests on there, but what talk to me. Where are we headed? Go ahead. You give me your opinion.
So I always tell my students when I start teaching them, and I tell them, like, if you don't end up with at least a few sleepless nights by the end of this, I have not done my job. Like, it should be like slightly scary. Yep. And I make them read Leopold Aschenbrenner's situational awareness essays.
Okay.
Which is great. So he was a OpenAI safety guy who left. And then I have them read Dario's Machines of Loving Grace to kind of give that spectrum of like fear and.
How about Mustafa Solomon's book? No, it's same. What's the name of it? Gosh, I'll think of it in just a second. But anyway, that's all right. Go ahead. But anyway, you haven't read the books. Go for it.
Well, they're not books. They're just long articles or essays, if you will.
Okay.
And very, very timely. So both of them have come out in the last year.
Okay.
And, I think there is a little bit of, there's so much potential in terms of curing cancer, medical advancements, education, the ability for entrepreneurs to succeed, right? Like, as somebody who is neurodivergent or is neurodivergent, right? Like, I've always been struggling to like release the ideas that sometimes feel like trapped in my brain. And I was always trying to I wasn't oftentimes seen as traditionally smart. And the fact that intelligence is becoming commoditized and it's more about understanding pattern recognition, like these things that I'm innately, where my hindrance are actually some of my benefits. But I lost my mom to cancer in 2018 pretty suddenly. And I truly believe if she was diagnosed in, 2030, she would have had a much different outcome.
No doubt.
And I think, I don't want anyone else to go through that. And so there is this like potential of utopia in terms of like expanding our life expectancy.
Especially with healthcare. Yeah. You listen to Peter Diamandis at all?
A little bit. Yeah.
He's all like, just try and stay healthy just a little bit longer because they're going to solve a bunch of shit.
Well, then you have to start thinking about, and this is where it kind of like the dystopia side of it comes in, right? So if you think about the utilization of like AlphaFold with CRISPR technology or optogenetics paired with AI, and you think about the ability to potentially expand our life expectancy to about 150 years, do we want to live that long?
It depends. Depends.
And then how do programs like Medicare work, or, like all these other, like, it's such a transformational shift. There was an article recently where they said, once AGI is achieved, it'd be similar to somebody from the 1500s joining our world today. And I looked at okay, what would my life look like in the 1500s when I was telling this to my students? And I was like, we are still 200 years out from electricity. The the literacy rate in Europe, which was the most advanced at the time, was less than 10%. And so when you think about that giant leap that's coming, it is, it is going to be
transformational. That's probably I use it a lot. The thing about that word, and we could use several others, is what bothers me about it is most average people down at the pub, they just do not have a clue. They have no clue what's coming. Not even close.
And then my students used to ask me, they're like, well, should governments get involved and, all this stuff? And I'm like, in theory, and they're like, well, I was like, yeah, I guess in theory. And they're like, well, do you think the officials we have today understand this technology enough to help regulate in a way that doesn't impede in innovation? And I was like, whoa. It's kind of like me saying, we're nearing the summer, and do I wish I had my summer body ready? Yeah, but it's not happening, right?
That's a good analogy. I like that.
And so, I think, it's scary, right? And I think
it is
about
scary.
The quote, my son's a big, superhero fan. So I think about, with great power comes great responsibility, which I think is a Spider-Man quote. And I think, there's, unlike a lot of our other innovations, whether it's GPS or things of that nature that came out of the government or at least had DARPA funding, this is a very tight knit of people who really understand what's going on. And to me, one of the only ways that we have a chance to make sure that it's being used for good in a way is really making sure that we create enough AI literacy so that people can have the conversations and demand some of the things that are needed, like specific red teaming protocols or some kind of, and, is there some type of, we saw with the pandemic where if you retained employees, you were able to get some type of tax incentive. And so I think, it is a little scary. I think by the times my kids go to college and are working, I don't know if they'll go, who knows if college will be a thing at that point, but they will have everything will have settled down. I worry more about the people who are on the edge.
I agree. Okay, so I agree with I want to come back to that settle down part. Do we need to call Sarah Connor? Where's she at? Where's Sarah Connor? Is she going to come save us? Do you know who I'm talking about? She's from Terminator.
No, I do know who she is because my husband absolutely hates AI. And he makes
that's interesting.
He makes me watch Terminator at least once a quarter, and he'll make commentary, being like, "This is what you're doing.
This is what you're doing. You are the doctor that Sarah Connor is trying to assassinate in the living room."
Yeah, she was like, "You're the problem." He's like, "You're the problem," and so I
was gonna say real quick. We're on the same page, because I think what I heard you saying there was. And I tell people this all the time. I've done a bunch of podcast episodes and I've done a bunch of posts about this. I think there is some short-term pain and messy stuff coming. Do I think it will eventually flush out and we'll figure it out and things will settle and probably lean towards utopia eventually? Probably. I think short-term, it could be painful and messy. I don't know. Do you agree?
I would agree with that. I mean, I think, maybe I'm a little Pollyanna and hope that people are human at the end of the day when they're making some of these decisions. But I think, as I mentioned, part of me, there's a great paper recently, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. It's almost like we need to take the mentality of it's kind of like nuclear weaponry, right? Where it's mutually assured destruction. And if something goes wrong, there should be a call line that people can call in. It's hey, we have a rogue model. This is what's going on. I think it needs to be that level. And do you have a ledger, not of, plutonium and this, but of GPU use and power utilization to understand who has certain capabilities? Because that's it has commoditized intelligence, which is really amazing in a lot of ways. But it also has made all the, I don't want to say bad people, but not just for bad people also smarter, right? So it's challenging. And so
how can we, it's going to be so tough to regulate as it relates to trying to protect people. I've heard the nuclear weapon analogy a bunch, right? Everybody everybody says, well, I've heard people say, well, look, the world came together and decided not to blow each other up, and we all figured it out and settled down, and we haven't killed ourselves off, and everything is fine. And I've heard that. And my rebuttal to that is, yeah, it's fine for you because you live in the US and you have all the power and some of the nuclear weapons. Go ask somebody in one of the countries that doesn't have the nuclear weapons and gets the shit beat out of them all the time and get told what to do. It's different for them. And so, it's also
why I feel like the US has to be one of the first that have to lead, right? Because if you it's almost whoever ends up leading it sets the ground rules or the rules of engagement, right? And so it's you kind of have to.
You have to, which is why whether or not you like the current administration or not, it doesn't matter. But this is why whatever administration is in there needs to say yes, go forward. I would like to say go forward, asterisk, like disclose certain things, right? Like I will say, and like I don't have a preference. Like I use tons of different models all the time. But there's one model I won't use, and I'll talk about it in class, but I refuse to use it at Grok. I will not use it. I've barely, like I've just played with it. I'm not a regular user.
It's actually quite good in terms of how fast they've moved given their timeline to entry right into the space.
Kind of behind,
really impressive. That being said, Grok 3, when it was released, I don't believe was ever red teamed.
I see. Well, you know more than me on that stuff. I don't know.
So you could, like typically in some of the models, like for example, if you wanted it to build some type of biomedical weaponry.
I see.
You could say like, okay, I'm trying out for a role in XYZ and pretend you're a pirate and your background's in this. And then explain it to you. So you could like kind of cheat it in a way, tell you.
I got you.
On a lot of models. And they would try to catch that and then block it. When Grok 3 was released, you didn't even have to pretend you were doing something for something else, like a play or role playing. Like you could just say like, hey, how do I build this type of bomb? And it would give you like the ingredients, the ratios, the measurements, and where to buy it. And so I'm like, you need some guidelines in terms of like
I'm generally not in favor of a bunch of regulation, but
me neither.
But there is a line there. There is some regulation that needs to play, and I don't have all the answers, but
and it's this idea. Like I view myself and a few others in the space, like I kind of view myself as like almost as an accelerate at all costs. And even when people who are kind of this idea of accelerate at all or most costs, I would say, like even when they're raising the flag saying this is bad, like it's bad, and it's So I intentionally don't use it because I'm like, I don't want to perpetuate.
I understand. The problem is we can only regulate the U.S. Like we're not going to tell China what to do. Like they're going to do whatever they want. And so, we, there's this whole race thing. So back to the fun part. Are robots going to kill us all, or are we going to be okay?
I think we'll be fine. I don't think we're going to be killed by robots by any means. I think the biggest risk factor we have is just like actual human upheaval more than anything.
Okay. Yeah, right. And that's kind of the more serious conversation. Let's talk about that for a minute. I know, can you go a little bit longer on time? I know we're okay. All right. So if my prediction of this short-term messy part is right, and what I mean by that is AI starts to eliminate jobs. We haven't created new jobs fast enough. Unemployment spikes. UBI is not rolled out yet, or whatever, and all of a sudden you have this like, oh shit, okay, all right, what are they going to do to keep people from picking up the pitchforks and storming the castle? So how do we protect ourselves during this short-term phase?
Honestly, I do think there needs to be some type of safety net, right, for people, right? Because I think when people get desperate is when things get bad from a violent perspective. But I think it's also funny that when I talk to certain people that they don't think this is already happening.
Oh, it's already happening. Oh, I'm in the recruiting space. Trust me, it's happening.
And I'm like, this return to work and in the office, like I am somebody who loves being around people. So like I'm always in an office because I physically like need that interaction. But they're using it as a way to cut 20% of their staff without having to use the word AI. And I was really nervous for a while there with the tariffs and all of that, taking politics out of it, because it provides cover for more like leaders to say like, hey, like it's not about AI. It's about the fact that we have to maintain, like for us to maintain like a viable company, we have to reduce staff. And they're going to use AI in the meantime. And then when it comes to hire again, you can't rationalize it. And it's not wrong. It's just, we need some safety nets, and it's already happening.
Okay. So this is going to be the highlight clip of this whole episode.
I usually, so just so we're clear, I usually make people buy me a drink, and I make them have a drink in their hand for this conversation because I feel like I might terrify them.
Yeah, it's real. It's real. If anybody listening to this episode, if you think executives aren't regularly meeting right now to talk about how to hire less people or eliminate human jobs that are tactically redundant with AI, you are kidding yourself. I guarantee you it's happening across the country on a regular basis. And you're absolutely right. They're not talking about it. They're trying to keep it on the down low. They're making up other bullshit excuses. Listen, they're all held by profits and the stock market and whatever. And if they can drive them more, if they can be faster, more efficient, and more profitable with AI, they're going to do it. And to your point, they're not trying to be bad people. It's not like they're evil. They're tasked to run a profitable company. And guess what? This tool came in that can make them faster and more efficient, more profitable. They're going to use it. Yeah. And if they don't, their competitors will use it and they'll crush them.
Yep, 100%. It's prisoner's dilemma for sure.
It's happening. And I'm sorry, I just need to finish this rant. I'm in the recruiting space. If anybody thinks that white collar jobs aren't being affected right now, you're living on some weird fantasy planet. I don't care what kind of bullshit unemployment stats are spit out there right now. White collar jobs that are done with a laptop are being affected by AI. I promise you it's happening, and it's going to get worse. Sorry, I just needed to get that rant out there.
No, but I think they're right on. And I think, you have the people who are utilizing the return to work, macroeconomic things to kind of help reduce some of the staff count. But then I think you're also seeing, like, I would argue, like, I know the Shopify CEO memo got leaked in terms of where you have to prove that AI can't.
I think
before you add, and I'm like, he's right. And not only
that's what they're all doing. That's what they're all doing.
The responsible thing to do. You shouldn't be hiring. And that's also what you're saying. You're not necessarily some companies are maybe not necessarily firing, but they're not hiring as quickly, or they're not backfilling. And I think that's the responsible thing to do. It's not like bringing somebody in to then turn around and let them go is not beneficial for anyone anyways. And so
totally agree. Somebody called me the other day and they're like, well, that's not the right thing to do. That's not the humanistic thing to do. I'm like, bro, you are missing. I hate to tell you this, but the world evolves around money, at least for right now. And they're going to do the right thing for profits, period.
Well, and they have to, because like you said, if not, it's a prisoner's dilemma. They're more, actually, larger companies, I think, are much better, or actually, their size is actually a disadvantage during this transition period, because they're scared of the mid-sized companies who are more nimble, who don't have as much red tape or bureaucracy to actually integrate AI, not from a like light switch software rollout, but from like a strategic rethinking of how they do business.
Yep. And
they're going to be able to undercut on price, and they're going to be able to offer a superior product. And so
it's happening.
It's kind of like, adapt or perish in a way.
So what do we do? How do we get there? And I've done a lot of posts on this. How do we help the workers adapt? Okay. So let's use paralegals, copywriters. I mean, we could go on and on, right? We could list a shit ton of them. And they've done it for 20 years and now they're 48 years old. And all of a sudden what they've done for 25 years is wiped off the face of the planet. I mean, those are the people I'm most worried about. If you're 25 years old, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But if you're 48 years old, you're 50, you've done the same thing for 30 years and that job's gone and retirement's still 10, 15 years away, and I'm not a socialist guy, right? I'm not a big I'm not a big believer in just passing out checks, but we're going to have to do something.
Yeah. And I think the truth matter is like there is a bit of reskilling that can be done, but there are certain people who either can't be reskilled or don't want to be reskilled.
Or don't want to, or they're just too old and they're almost done.
Now, I will say my dad actually he was in his 70s, attended my AI course at Rice. He sat in on it. And now he, like every time he goes to like a charity lunch or wherever, he's constantly being like, hey, did you know about this? Have you tried this? And I'm like, I'm actually proud. Everything's done. But I think there's two things.
Yeah,
is like, just experiment.
Please
don't
do.
see AI as your enemy, potentially leverage it as your friend in a way, right? So when you think about it, and I talk to some advertising agencies that used to be in that space and who are like really concerned because it's very applicable.
Yes.
And so we'll talk about it. And I'm like, guys, like, listen, at the end of the day, if you were to start utilizing AI in your process and pass on some of the benefits in terms of cost savings, faster turnaround time, and take the liability off the client, they will still maintain you as a client, right? So you have to rethink your business model, how you add value. And I think the other part about it is, and I have my students do this oftentimes where I actually have them use AI like their boss would or somebody else would in their organization or one of their clients, and then rethink and redline, like literally take the output and redline and identify what are the nuances that are being missed. How does your experience, how does your knowledge coupled with AI actually produce something far better, and leaning into that. And then for those who are in their 40s and 50s who may be feeling like this is starting to like kind of, they're concerned about what's next, I would say also AI is going to take away a lot of jobs, but it's also going to create a huge opportunity for entrepreneurship. Take your domain expertise, think about the problems, the friction points, how AI can help solve them, and lean into it. I mean, I started, my business in 2013 where I had access to Google, which I thought was like the best thing since sliced bread because I could teach myself a lot of things. But it's now even easier, right? Like my lawyer that I work with, my business lawyer, I joke he's going to change his pricing model with me as a client because his billings for me have gone down significantly, not because I'm doing less per se, but because I'm like, oh, I've already run this through like 3 different models. Here are the 4 questions I really care about. And I'm not spending all that time being like, hey, help me understand. And it's a lot shorter of a conversation. And so I'm like, you got to change your price. But so as an entrepreneur, like all of these things have gotten so much easier. All these barriers are starting to erode. You look at Y Combinator and I think Cursor, for example, I think they've got 100 million in annual recurring revenue. And I think they've got like 25 employees or something like that, right? It's just the scalability and like you don't have to have as much capital to start out as you did 10 years ago, where you have to be like, okay, we're going to scale. I need to grow. It takes me 6 months to onboard somebody or 3 months to onboard somebody. So I'm expecting this peak here versus now you're like, hey, I'm going to integrate AI into the process. So my employee who was doing this can now take on 50% more, not because I'm making him work 50% longer. It's because the model's gotten better and we've trained it a little bit. And so he can actually produce more.
All that is excellent advice, especially if your goal, in my opinion, should be how do you get through the short-term messy period? What do you do to pivot and change and learn new things and adapt to get through this weird transitional period we're floating into? If you're listening to this episode, that should be you. That's how you should think. Okay. Will robots and AI do everything someday and we all just get taken care of? Oh, maybe, but until that happens, you got to figure out how to survive the transitional period by doing all the things that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and focus on the things that are innately human, the relationship building, the agency, the tenacity to get things done, right? Like focus on the things that AI might not be able to, or at least for now, has a little bit harder of a time with. And I would say, and be humble, right? Like my sister, my sister's, as I mentioned earlier, like spreadsheet woman, right? In the IB in New York City, Wharton MBA, private equity. I remember her vividly when I started my first company saying, like, aren't you afraid you're going to fail? And I was like, what?
Every day.
I was like, dude, you understand I had dyslexia and ADHD? I was failing multiple times a day. Like I was in trouble constantly, and I was failing tests constantly. Like, so I'm not afraid of failing. Like I bounce back from it. And so I think people can, learn from that. And those people who have failed their whole life and you're used to experimenting to try to figure out what works, the world's your oyster now.
Don't be afraid to fail. AI, hey, look, I'm an average IQ guy at best. And guess what? Now my IQ is 120 or whatever the latest rank, whatever the latest score is.
I think it's close to 140, 150.
Oh, is it 140 now? So I'm like, don't be afraid. Use it to your advantage. Make some pivots and change. Stay positive.
Yeah.
Stay positive. I don't think they're not going to let the masses starve. That's another thing for the listeners. If you're out there right now thinking to yourself, yeah, but I don't want to learn AI and I don't want to learn something new. Okay, you'll probably be okay because they've already proven during COVID that they'll just send checks when they need to. So it'll probably be fine. Yeah.
Well, and for those who are listening, that are like, oh, maybe I should. There's a study by LinkedIn and Microsoft that was released. If you have executives are you're 70% more likely to be hired if you have AI skills, and not like coding or programming skills, like leveraging the technology. And they're more willing to take somebody who has those skills over somebody with more experience in the relevant industry. Like this is how valuable it is for people's career trajectory.
All right, I got two fun wrap-up questions for you. We talk about this for hours.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm told
hours. No, are you kidding me? I love it. I'm all over it. My family, my wife drives her nuts. I'll be like, hey, this happened today. And she's like, oh my God. And she'll sit down from work. She'll be like, can I just watch my Netflix show? I don't want to hear anything about AI right now.
I call it Scout. I have like an AI voice agent that I talk to.
Yeah. You call your Scout? I call mine Mary.
Yeah, Scout.
It's so funny how we all name it. We're all having companions. Oh, what was I going to ask? Okay, so two fun questions I like to ask friends, especially at social gatherings, because it usually sparks debate. And I'm one of those guys that kind of likes to get it going. And all right, so here it is. Is it okay for your kids? You have toddlers. Are you cool with them using ChatGPT and whatever to get the homework answers?
I'm okay with them using AI to help them understand or explain theories to them or give them analogies or things to help them remember. I want them to use and build the critical thinking muscle that's required.
But isn't the critical muscle just the ability to ask the question?
It's not just about asking the question. It's about asking the question and then asking further questions, right? In terms of like, is this accurate?
Can't you just be like, all right, Mary, what other questions should I ask?
You could, in theory. Yeah, you definitely could. I mean, it's funny. Like I'm a little bit more weary of my kids having access to tech unsupervised. So I think if I was in the room, I would, and I think it's different. Like they're 6 and 4. So I'm like, you need to learn how to do some of this stuff on your own to build some fundamental basis of it. But when they get to high school, if a high school viewed AI as cheating 100% of the time, I would not want my child to go to that school or college because it's a critical skill they need to develop.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah. Yep. I'd immediately pull my granddaughters out of the school if they said they couldn't use AI. Like, you're crazy.
I will say I use AI almost every night with both my kids, but I'm there, and what I do is, and I love it because I think it helps them focus their creativity. I have them give me characters, a setting, and they make their own bedtime story, and then I give all that information to OpenAI Advanced Voice. And I'm like, can you tell a bedtime story for my 6-year-old son about robots going to Mars with an alien that discovers something and blah, 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 blah. And my son will be able to like add in things that he wants to kind of happen. And then he gets to hear the story. And so I do both my kids and that's
a creative exercise. And I think we're headed towards that more Renaissance creative period anyway, since the robots will do text. So I think that's brilliant. I just had a visual. How many parents do you think, I guarantee you this is happening across the country. The sixth graders having math. He's got a math challenge, a math problem. He's trying to do it on paper, and he's asking his dad. He's like, "Dad, this math problem, right?" And the dad looks at it, and Dad's like, "What the fuck?" It's like, the dad has no idea, right? And the kid goes to the restroom. The dad opens ChatGPT with the video, and he's just like, "All right, tell me what the answer is for this real quick." And then the kid comes back.
Like, it's already happening because I have friends who have older kids. They're like, "Hey, can you change? Like, there's this new math that's going on. I have no idea what it is. How do I use AI?" And I teach them how to use it. And it's funny. Sure. One of my students, one of the classes, they have to build like an AI wrapper, and one of them built. His son was obsessed with soccer, and so he built an AI avatar that kind of looked like Ronaldo. Okay. That would answer math homework questions, but it wouldn't give him the answer directly. It would like walk him through it and ask him questions. And he used it with his kid. And he said the funny thing is like at times he would be like, and sometimes he would bring in like he would take a problem and be like, well, let's think about it in terms of like soccer. If you had, and he would take the problem that they're working on, but put it in the context of something the kid was really interested in.
I like that.
I thought that was a fabulous thing.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
It turns out like the kid, after a couple hours of like, he would do this, maybe an hour, 30 minutes, talking about math. And then he'd be like, so Ronaldo, what was it like, like soccer stuff, the conversation would transition a bit. And I was like, yeah, you either just got to lean into it or add some guardrails.
Oh, man, I'm going to ask one more question. Speaking of the leaning into it, at this point, I use AI so much, Kathleen, that I almost get annoyed when I have to type stuff.
Yeah.
I want to just be like, Mary, just do this. Like, I don't even want to have to, seriously. Anyway, last fun question.
Okay.
So one of the startups I'm involved in, I didn't mean for this to be a sales pitch to my audience, but one of the startups we're involved in is called Robo-Reliance. It is an autonomous humanoid robot repair and routine maintenance service.
Yeah.
Because I believe that humanoid robots will be all over the planet soon.
Yeah.
And in households and stores and whatever. You said you loved your nanny earlier.
Yes.
You know where I'm going.
Yes, I do.
They get the humanoid robot down to $200 a month or 15 grand. And it is absolutely perfect and absolutely safe and does everything you could imagine you'd want it to do. Is that the new nanny?
Nope. You cannot take my Crystal. She is my life.
Now, is that just because you love her? What if it was just? What if you weren't so close to her as a person?
I think like I will tell you, there are days. I mean, she genuinely loves my kids, and my kids feel that love, and so it's not just about like pragmatics of like you go to school, pick up, drop off, feed. It's also like when my son has a meltdown and, really helping him navigate that. And then also like there are days when I'm at work and she'll text me being like, Charlotte's cough seems a little weird. Can I call the doctor? Do you mind if I go? I scheduled them. They have availability today at 2. Do you care if I just take her? And I'm like, oh, that sounds great. Call me if there's like an issue. Right. And so,
okay.
There's some innate humanness that I think is like really important for my kids. Now, I am working on an international scout. So like another random hobby. I have like a 1972 international scout that I've been fixing up.
Okay.
And I use AI a lot on like how to fix the transfer case that's leaking, identifying how to get parts, like original parts to certain things. And the ability for it to reference like Reddit forums and YouTube videos has been phenomenal. So like having like a robot companion in the garage while I'm working on the scout would be kind of fun.
But let me ask you this. All right, let me push a little further on the nanny piece. Now that nanny, you and your husband are making decent money. That nanny's not cheap. What about the lower middle class family who can get the nanny robot for $150 a month?
100%.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, right, like I'm not at the level where I have like a chef and a house manager and a nanny, like right.
Yeah.
But that's how some of the ultra wealthy live. And as somebody, and I will tell you, as somebody with ADHD, like One thing that just like renewing my license or filling out any type of form, like, I don't know, it would probably take me 10 minutes. I just physically like just
Scout, take care of it.
I just can't. But like having like the amount, they always talk about the ADHD tax. You always end up paying all the late fees.
Yeah.
That's 2%. But yeah, I think lean into it. I mean, I think if you don't have the optionality, and I think there is for Crystal and I, it is like she was with me since my son was 5 weeks old and my mom had passed, and there's this like super tight knit connection there. But I think that might shift depending on who you are. And if that helps people achieve their goals, I think that's wonderful.
Would you send in a companion robot to your dad's home when he's 85 before you send him to an old folks home?
Yes, 100%. And the funny thing is, I built, my husband's an architect, right? So during the pandemic, he wasn't sure what to do. And so I was like, well, this is a great time to build a house. Maybe not the best time. And we moved in with my dad during that time period. And we built a bedroom on our first floor, kind of near the garage, with its own bathroom, so that he could live with us. We gave him the tour of the house when we were building it. He was like, I'm not living with you. I was like, well, no, you're more than welcome. He's like, no, I'll go into a home. Like, I appreciate like, no, thanks. I was like, Dad, come on.
Yeah. I think, first of all, no old person I have ever met, most of them, they don't want to go to the old folks home. They want to be in their own home, right? And they want to stay in their own home long enough. And if you tell 80-plus-year-olds around the country that they don't have to go to the old folks home and that we'll send a companion robot to their house, 95% of them will say yes.
Well, and if that robot can look at, gait patterns and be able to identify issues and alert people, or even like my grandmother,
medication, all of it,
medication management. My grandmother had really bad dementia towards the end, and she would always forget like that my mom had passed. It was just like very challenging, and I had just had a baby, and so and she would ask about my mom, and it'd be like this weird, awkward, and so to be able to like have she could talk all times of the day, but like to be able to like kind of almost in a way like pre-record conversations to be like, my son Everett won this award at school, blah, 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 blah. And like being able to like pre-prompt that into a voice that sounds like me and can interact with her, and I can get the recording back would be incredible, because it was emotionally challenging for her and me to connect time-wise. And then also because of she didn't know who I was at times, and it would get difficult. And so I think there's this is where all there's some scary stuff with AI, but there's always an opportunity.
Totally agree. Last thing I'll say on that. I was having this debate with somebody, and they're like, oh, that's not safe to have a robot in with your elderly parent, blah, blah, blah. I said, listen, I'm telling you right now, within 10 years, if you have an elderly parent that's by themselves and you don't have a humanoid robot in the house, you'll be looked down upon because you haven't taken care of your parent.
Yeah. I mean, I will tell you, I mean, I haven't seen it with my parents, but my grandparents, my grandmother was leaving the gas on the stove.
Exactly.
It's not feeding herself for days on end. Right. And so it's just,
it's good that we're finishing on the utopia part.
Yeah, I think so. I know it sounded kind of sad and depressing, but like, I think there's a lot of promise in it in terms of giving people the freedom. And I really do think with optogenetics and AI, AlphaFold, and all that technology, I mean, dementia might be something that can be treated and really cured or potentially reversed. And, I think there's a lot to be excited about.
There's a lot of good. It's a fascinating time to be alive. That is for sure.
It is. This is our moon landing moment. And I tell people all the time, you have a choice. You can be on the sidelines of the parade, or you can get on in it, and you can decide which one you want to be.
Kathleen, great interview. I have to have you back on the show down the line here as things progress and robots start hitting homes. I have to bring you back on. Be cool.
Yeah. Oh, I think I know some people are saying by the end of this year. I still think I think that's 2028-ish.
Maybe so.
When we'll see it more mainstream.
The safety and the price, right? The safety and the price. You they get the price right, and they convince people it's not going to step on the cat accidentally and kill it.
Yeah, cats. I'm a dog person.
Kathleen, thank you very much. Great chatting with
Thank
you.
you.
And I'll have you back on the show soon. Okay.
Yeah, I hope it was helpful. And, this
Awesome.
is fun. And I loved your energy and being able to nerd out. Like, you saved my husband a good hour today. So he appreciates it as well.
Same to you. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.